Hello again, Stephen King fans. I am back here for another video. Now, even though this channel has kind of morphed into a music channel, and especially metal, and I'm fine with that. That's the main focus of my collection. I also have other things, in my collection, mainly Stephen King novels. I'm a huge fan of that author, and in fact, the most watched videos here on this channel are the Stephen King collection videos. Where I show my book and movie collection. And one of the very first comments I got on this channel was if I could make a list of my top 10 Stephen King books. So I'm going to do it. And these are, I would really call this list my top 10 favorite Stephen King books, because it's completely my opinion. And, a lot of people will disagree, even though this list will be very similar to other lists you can find here on YouTube. So let's get started. I'm going to put the titles and the year of publication down here. All right. Let's get started with the first one, which would be his second novel, which is Salem's Lot. All right. This is his vampire book, his retelling of a Dracula as he himself has stated. Okay, an excellent book. Really great characters, really very much a horror book, where he was really going into the horror much more than in his first novel, which was Carrie. This is the special illustrated edition of Salem's Lot. And when it says illustrated, it really means that it has some photographs that add mood to the story. Let's see if I can find one. Like that one. Or maybe this one. They're just photographs that are don't really have anything to do with the story, but they just add mood to it. All right. And I'm also going to show if I own the movie adaptations. In the case of Salem's Lot, there have been two of them, and both of them miniseries. The first one was this one, of course, which came out, I believe, in 79. All right. Really, really good. Made for TV miniseries. And it was done again. And let's see if I can find the year here. 2004. With this one. Here you'll see that the title is in Spanish. That's because, of course, I live in Mexico, where I bought this one. Okay. And this one is also a TV miniseries, which is not as good as this one, but it is still pretty good. I really like it. Rob Lowe has a starring role in this one, and David Soul of Starsky and Hutch fame has a starring role in this one. All right, so here's that other adaptation. Let's go with my number 2 favorite Stephen King book, which is The Shining. All right. Absolutely a great novel. This would, of course, be in almost everybody's top 10 Stephen King book list. And it is, this is the paperback edition. I don't know if I like this cover, because it makes it look like one of those evil kid movies. Books. All right. About a haunted hotel, which exerts an influence over the kid protagonist, who has latent psychic powers, all right, which is referred to as The Shining. Really good book, really scary, and it has been adapted twice. First in 1980, of course, the famous version directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Jack Nicholson, right there looking crazy as hell. All right, it is said that Stephen King hates this version. It's not true. He simply doesn't agree with it, or maybe he just doesn't like it that much. Because the tone of the story and the focus was a bit shifted here. But even so, I have no problem with this adaptation, because that's what it is, an adaptation, and it is one of the best horror movies ever made. If you want a very faithful adaptation of The Shining, well, you got it. Here it is. It was made into a TV miniseries where the script was written by Stephen King himself. Directed by, let's see, it was Mick Garris. Mick Garris, who has directed several Stephen King adaptations on the small screen. And this is very faithful, but it is just way too long and really boring. I hate to say it. You know, Rebecca De Mornay appears in this one, and she's gorgeous. But even so, well, she's the best part of this adaptation. But this one just goes on way, way too long. It is a case where if you are very faithful to the book, it's not always a good thing. Let's go with my number 3. Here we have The Dead Zone, right there. The Dead Zone, about a man with psychic powers who was able to see the future. Picture of Stephen King right there in the back. You know, excellent book with incredible characterization. The character of Johnny Smith, who is the main character in the book, and who faces a moral dilemma and also the burden of having these psychic powers. It's one of the most fully realized characters that Stephen King has ever written. The Dead Zone. This one has also been adapted. Let me see. I have the adaptation right here in my Stephen King 4-pack. Here it is. The Dead Zone. And this one was directed by David Cronenberg. Can't go wrong with that. Really good adaptation right there. Christopher Walken, very well cast as the tortured man with the burden of psychic powers. And also adapted twice in this movie, and also as a television series, which ran, I believe it was for 6 seasons. This is my 5th season DVD set, and I believe I have them all except one of the seasons that I'm missing. All right, this one stars Anthony Michael Hall as Johnny Smith, the psychic, and it is a bit toned down, you know, but still very interesting because it for a series that ran for so long, you know, it obviously went into several different directions. Okay, that was The Dead Zone. Let's put these things over here. Excuse me. All right. Now we go with a book that I do not have physically, even though I have read it, and I read that the Spanish language version of it, but I don't know where I left it. So I'm going to put the cover over here. It is a Pet Sematary. All right. So really one of Stephen King's scariest books about a cemetery that is able to raise the dead. It's been adapted twice. I have here the adaptation for the screen, Pet Sematary, right there. Very good, directed by Mary Lambert. Really one of the better Stephen King adaptations because they're not always very good. All right, so I read that one in Spanish, in fact, and I want to reread it again in its original English, though I don't have that version yet. You know, the physical form. Now let's go with possibly his most famous book, which is It. Here we have It. This is a paperback version from a way back when. It is starting to yellow a bit. This is the version that I read when I was a very young man. Okay, and when I read it first, it was a bit hard to digest because it is a huge book. All right, of course, about an evil entity that can take many forms, among them a clown. Even though that clown persona has become not almost synonymous with it, even though that persona is only one of the shapes that it takes. All right, this is the only one that I have 2 versions of the book. When the modern adaptation of the book came out, I decided to buy myself another copy, so I could have a hardcover copy of It. Also a huge book, right there. Really good size font, so it was easy reading, even though it was not easy to carry the book because it's so heavy. Okay, It has been adapted twice, as you may know. First as a television miniseries, I have it right here, which a lot of people have seen. This one came out in the 1990, and it is starting to show its age. Tim Curry does an excellent job as Pennywise. And one of the things that I believe is missing in both of the adaptations is that the sense that it is a personification of cosmic horror, kind of like H.P. Lovecraft style cosmic horror. So when we only get to see the clown and a few other personas, that doesn't come across as good. Here is the modern adaptation. It Part 1. As of the making of this video, Part 2 is only about a few weeks away from coming out. I really liked it, and I'm going to say it, I like this version better than this. I think it does a better job of conveying what the book's about. Okay, we go now to novella collection, Full Dark, No Stars. Here. It is a collection of 4 novellas, and this one has a bonus story. And those novellas are 1922, which has been adapted into a movie. I don't have it. It's on Netflix. Big Driver, which has also been adapted into a movie. Fair Extension, which has not. And A Good Marriage, which has been adapted into a movie. And I really like these novellas because, like the title says, they are very dark stories. Really, Stephen King really going back into that pure horror of it. And the one that is the extra story in this edition of Full Dark, No Stars is Under the Weather. Now we go with 11/22/63. Okay, there's the movie about a man that finds a way to time travel back to the 60s, and he attempts to stop the assassination of John F. Kennedy. All right, it's there's a science fiction element to it, but that is very slight. There's the time travel thing, but the book doesn't delve too much into it. It's just there, and there's also a slight horror element right there in the background, but it's mostly a story, a character-driven story. There's also a touching romance story in this, and of course, that picture of that era, the early '60s, that you really get in this book. We now go with here Dr. Sleep, which is a kind of sequel to The Shining. I say kind of because everybody always says that this is a sequel to The Shining. It is, yes. But this is really very much its own story. It has one of the main characters, which is the kid from the original Shining. He's now all grown up, still has the powers of The Shining, but it goes off into another story. All right, so this is more of an independent story, and I really like it. It has some great horror elements. We delve more into the power of The Shining, what it is and what it does. Okay, really like that cover too. Now with these last two are really personal favorites that you may not find in somebody else's lists. Okay, the first is Joyland. Excuse me. Love that cover. And it is a very it's a great story. It combines the coming of age story, the crime story, and the ghost story. It is published by Hard Case Crime, which they usually do straight ahead crime novels, in the old fashioned style, and they usually have these retro style covers. And it has some pretty creepy moments, but it's more really a mystery story, and I love it. And the thing I love, the characters are great, and it's also set in an amusement park, which I think is super cool. I love amusement parks and stories set in amusement parks. Joyland. The last one that I'm going to talk about is Revival, which is not one that I see in many Stephen King top 10 lists, but I believe that this is really the best of the Stephen King's latter-day novels. It really tackles the big question of what happens when you die. This novel really goes there, and it goes to places where a Lovecraft kind of hinted at, but here Stephen King kind of blows the doors wide open and totally goes for the throat. In that of the cosmic horror. All right, really, really enjoyed this one. This is a short book, even though the story is epic. All right, well, short for Stephen King. Let me see how many pages. It is 403. So, most Stephen King books go over 500 pages. So there we go. Revival. That's it for my top 10, or my top 10 favorite Stephen King books. Thank you very much for watching, and so long.